A really warm Carlisle and Cumbria welcome.
Thank you so much, Colin, and good evening, everybody. What a spectacular sight it is to see so many people in Carlisle. I am the newly elected Member of Parliament for North West Durham, and on the 8th of June, before the 8th of June, the media pundits had it that the Tories were going to take that seat. Well, on the 8th of June, we got more votes there than we have since 1997. What an incredible general election it was. We have to take strength and energy from those achievements. Just 6 weeks from polling day, the powerful spectators had consigned us to electoral doom. They brandished our leader and all of us activists as terrorist sympathisers. They said that we weren't economically credible, that our ideology was a threat to national security. Their questioning was more like a maths memory exam than a scrutiny of our ideology, hoping to trip us up, to try and catch us out. There were lies after lies after lies, and do you know what? We overcame all of that. Because our manifesto, unlike the Tories, was an unequivocal statement of hope. No longer is it good enough, is it, to offer lukewarm platitudes to people in desperate need of change. The days of meek and mild politics to combat the evils of greed and exploitation are firmly over. In dignity and with sheer determination, we denied Theresa May the majority she thought she could steal. It was our activism, it was everybody here, all of the conversations you had online or in real life that stripped the Tory party's legislative programme of some of its most pernicious elements, and we definitely have them on the ropes. Whilst Theresa May has been on a month-long holiday, I don't know, is she back yet from a holiday? Does anyone know? Our leader has been visiting communities across the United Kingdom. Our party is making the case for socialism and for a better system, not just to luxuriate in our own voices or egos, but because change is so desperately needed. No longer should a nurse, literally saving lives, have to suffer the indignity of a trip to the food bank. It's not right that prison officers protecting us from some of the most complex people in society be insulted by their pension and pay being robbed and their safety compromised at the hands of a further privatised system. The Conservatives, as we all know, are completely out of touch. They applaud the so-called decrease in unemployment without any critical analysis of the nature of that employment. If work entrenches your poverty, because it's so insecure, because it's so lowly paid and so infrequent, then as a movement we will not celebrate that as an achievement. To attack our education system, our NHS, to make our social security system a punishing, humiliating, degrading ordeal, to steal our public services from us, the things that we own and pay for, to suggest that us in the north of the country should have a second-class system because we're somehow second-class people. And if you rob the 1950s women of their pensions, which they rightly deserve, and then you laugh at the power and politics of young people and then ignore our collective demands, then you will create your own downfall. The Conservatives have absolutely no credibility with working people. We don't mind a bit of rain, it's fine. The leader is coming. And what is more, and this is important, I have absolutely no respect for a Prime Minister who refuses to condemn Donald Trump and his Nazi apologising. We know, and I'll end on this, we know that an attack on our communities will continue unless we are in power. We know that next time there is a general election, we will be under more pressure, more scrutiny than we ever have been. And all of us, every single one of you, will be in the firing line. They'll laugh at our optimism. They'll tell us that we can't afford a better society and that we are politically immature. But do you know what? Their attacks will be our fuel. Their attacks will be our energy. He gets a brolly, how come I don't? He wants a fairer system, he says. Thank you, Jeremy. Because it is when, and let us all remember this in our darkest moments, it's when we are most powerful that they are most critical. Take everything that we have known about politics, take the political rule book and the predictions and rip them up, because we can win in every single community in the UK. Our strategy will be an offensive campaign. People said that we couldn't win in Canterbury, Kensington, Portsmouth South, Battersea, Midlothian, Croydon Central and Ipswich, and against all the odds we did. And you know where we're coming for next? We're coming for Carlisle, and we will win. Friends, we are without a doubt on the brink of something absolutely incredible. We have a mass, powerful movement that if we stay active, if we stay resolute and united, we will absolutely win. Now, for the moment you've all been waiting for, the leader of our Labour Party, the man who has always voted for the people and never against the people, is Jeremy Corbyn. Thank you.
Don't be put off by the rain. What's a bit of rain? We're tougher than that. We can cope, yeah? Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Colin, for what you said and what you do and the way you lead the town in order to try and survive during the worst vestiges of a Tory government, slashing public expenditure in so many areas. Our job is to fight back against it. Thank you, Laura, for what you just said and what you're doing in Parliament, and what a breath of fresh air you've been since you got elected only, what is it now, a couple of months ago. Thank you so much for what you've done and what you're doing. I want to say thank you to all of you for the work you did in the general election, the work you do day to day in supporting our movement and the causes that go with it, including getting wet on a Wednesday evening here in Carlisle. I want to pay welcome to lots of people here, but there's one group I want to thank particularly and congratulate them. Over there you'll see a lovely banner saying Alston Labour, RNHS. As you all know, Alston is not the biggest place in the country. Indeed, it is quite small, and they would be the first to say that. But they work so hard for the Labour Party there. They won a council seat in a by-election when Lizzie Sharp got elected, and we've never had a Labour councillor there ever before. Lizzie, congratulations, and congratulations to Alston Labour. And there are many people here who are representing different groups and different organisations that have done so much in the election campaign and since. I want to say a particular welcome to all those from the rail unions. I can see the RMT banner over there, for all that they do in this town that was built on railways, that railways are such an important part of it. And it's not up to a Tory government to continue to raise the fares, knowing full well the damage that will do to our industry. It's going to be a Labour government that brings the railways back into public ownership in the future. Now, we went through the general election campaign, and we were written off and written off and written off and written off. We were written off so many times I stopped buying the daily papers, because I couldn't see the point of reading the same story again and again. And so instead of doing that, and instead of listening to the doom merchants, the soothsayers and everybody else, we went out there with a resolute, determined and optimistic campaign. We were going to take the fight to the Tories, we were going to offer something different, we were going to put forward a manifesto that was transformational, not managerial, and offer real chance and real hope of people and communities coming together to fight against the Tories, coming together to offer some hope and decency for young people and protection and support for older people in our society. Our election campaign wasn't a youth campaign, it wasn't an older person's campaign, it wasn't any one group's campaign. It was the amalgamation of so many campaigns, so many hopes, so many ideas, and so many collective aspirations. And you know what? The Labour vote went up across the whole country by 3 million over 2015. And that was because of the work many did in voter registration. 2 million new people registered to vote for the election, done by so many community organisations, trade unions, local Labour parties, in not just door knocking to identify how people are going to vote, but also got a conversation going on the streets, in the cafes, in the pubs, on the buses, on the trains, about what we needed in this country. Do we need another 5 years of cuts in public expenditure? Another 5 years of longer waiting lists in hospitals? Another 5 years of older people often left in hospital when they should be at home or in some kind of care centre getting support? Do we need that kind of society? The one thing I do give the credit to the Tories for is they do believe in redistribution of wealth. They really do. They strongly support redistribution of wealth. So do I. We all support redistribution of wealth. The only problem is the directions are absolutely opposite. And so our manifesto was challenged. They're saying, well, you said you're going to cut college fees. You're going to bring back the EMA and you're going to end university fees. How are you going to pay for it? I said, quite simple. We're going to increase corporate taxation in order to pay for education for everybody else. And we were the only party to produce a fully costed manifesto, which John McDonnell and his team worked really hard on, and are now working very hard on the details of how we're going to develop things, develop our policies, and bring it on for another general election as soon as we can. Because we gained seats, the Tories didn't get the majority they thought they were going to get. They lost seats. They now don't have a majority in Parliament, and they rely on a shabby deal with the DUP in exchange for £1 billion being put into pet DUP projects in Northern Ireland. And that's how they're trying to survive. So we gave them a chance. Remember all those crocodile tears from Tory MPs? How they supported firefighters, how they supported ambulance workers, how they supported paramedics, how they supported all the emergency services, how they welcomed the work of the police and others, did a fantastic job during the horrors of the Manchester bombing or the London Bridge attack. Yeah, they did say all of that. And we gave them a chance. Lift the public sector pay cap. Vote with us to lift the public sector pay cap and allow the unions to negotiate with the employers and agree on new levels of wages and conditions. Now, they voted it down. And so, in other words, their praise is short-lived while the cameras are there, but they're not there when those wonderful public sector workers do the job and have to pay the bills at the end of the week. Too many nurses accessing food banks in modern Britain. There cannot be anything right, moral or correct about that. We called them out on that in this election, and we're calling them out on all of that in our campaigns this summer. And so we continue with our campaign. And so as soon as Parliament rose for the summer recess, we've set out on the campaign trail. We're doing a very large number of constituencies all over the country. This summer we were in the southwest last week in Cornwall. We've got a huge rally in Truro, a place we didn't win, but I tell you what, there's going to be Labour MPs in Cornwall, there's going to be a Labour MP in Carlisle, and there's going to be Labour MPs in Cumbria and every other part of the country. We are absolutely determined to achieve that. And there are many things that are very special about us and our party and what we believe in, but to me an absolute fundamental has to be the principle of the National Health Service. If you think back, I mean, I'm not old enough, but if you think back to what you've studied in history and read about of what the 1945 Labour government had to contend with a country that had been damaged and bombed, with millions of servicemen coming back home, and with all the problems they had to face with. It would have been so easy, so very easy to say, well, now is not the time to bring in a National Health Service. Now is not the time to do it. We'll do it a bit later. No, they didn't. And R.M. Bevan said, no, we're going to do it. We are going to make sure that healthcare, your access to a doctor, your access to good quality healthcare is a right, not a privilege, a human right for all of you. And we should never lose that principle within our party. And I tell you this, we never will, because it's what we believe in. But then you look at what is actually happening within the NHS. Brilliant people working in the NHS, 14% pay cut in reality over 7 years because of the freeze on their pay, lots of jobs lost, lots of stress amongst ambulance workers, paramedics, nurses, admin staff and everybody else, and a grotesquely underfunded mental health service and grotesquely underfunded social care system. So it is creaking. The answer is not more privatisation, is not more selling off of assets. The answer isn't more cuts. The answer is investment in our health service for the good of the entire community for the future. And so in Cumbria, we made the point about the West Cumbria Hospital, we made the point about the ambulance journey times, and this morning I was talking to people who ought to be receiving the social care they need. They're not getting it because it isn't there and not properly funded to do it. There are tens of thousands of people every year who should not be in hospital, who should be getting the care they need at home. We cannot go on ignoring the social care crisis, which is why we pledged in the election to set up a national care service, why we're so determined to bring in decent social care all across the country, and umbrellas for everybody else because of the rain. And so it's that I feel very strongly about, it's that the party feels strongly about. I also feel very strongly about the way in which we, as a society, pass by on the other side far too often when people are going through a mental health crisis in their lives. And it's up to us as a movement, as a party, as unions, as organisations, as people living in communities, to end the stigma surrounding mental health, to treat people with a mental health condition with the respect we'd want for ourselves and recognise they need that help and support and proper funding of the service. And so we will give reality to parity of esteem within the health service of those conditions. And so we campaign on all those things. We also campaign on many things, but I'll just mention two others. First is education. We want the best for our children, we want the best for our young people, we want them to be able to achieve. That means we have to put resources into education. It starts very, very young. 30 hours child support every week for every child before primary school is to me very important. Doing it together. So the lesson those children will learn and live with for the rest of their lives is that their early years were playing together with other children, learning skills about each other, communication and everything else, going to primary school together in a local primary school, eating a good quality free school meal every day in a primary school. And with our pledge for a pupil arts premium, all those children learning to develop their imagination, their skills, and learn a musical instrument together while they're in primary school, because that will stand them in such good stead, not just in the lessons they do in maths and everything else, but in their creativity and their imagination. And so I think those things are important, as I also think that the community has a role in college and adult education as well as university education. So we will bring back the educational maintenance allowance to support young people in education, and we will again be prepared to raise the tax necessary in order to fund the cancellation of student fees for the future, so that those that are contemplating going to university won't be saddled with the massive debts that previous generations have been. It's a Tory government that has raised them to 9,000 a year and would actually like to raise the cap altogether. Well, it's not on. We're going to be there opposing them all the way on this, because education is important, yes, for the individual, of course, because we want everyone to be able to achieve their maximum potential, whatever the postcode, wherever they were born. But we also want it for everybody else, because a young person that couldn't become an engineer means we have one less engineer in our society. Somebody that wanted to become a plumber or electrician and wasn't able to get through the course, we lose that. We lose so much if we don't invest in our future. And so that is what I'm determined the Labour government will do and give as its priority. There's also the question of investment in the economy as a whole, because we don't invest enough in this country, we don't pay people enough in this country, and we don't look to the kind of industries we need for the future, and manufacturing industry jobs and investment in infrastructure we need all across the country. So we're pledged to a national investment bank that would be regionally based, so that Cumbria could get the investment it needs in improving its rail infrastructure, so that it could get the new jobs it needs all along the coast, and so we could invest in the north of England, particularly in transport infrastructure. It's not good enough for the Tories to say they wanted a northern powerhouse, get through an election campaign, the next thing they do is cut most of the investment programmes all over the north of England within a few weeks of the election being held. And so we will ensure that investment goes in. And it's also how we do it and what jobs we want to create for the future. Because it isn't just about a political party making an offer in an election campaign or in a manifesto. It's all about how we conduct ourselves, how we develop those ideas. Every single one of you that's here tonight, every single one of you has got ideas. Ideas of how things could be done, ideas of how housing could be better delivered, education, how we could invest in new jobs, new industries, high-skilled jobs, sustainable industries, all those things, all there. I want our party to be open, participative and welcoming to people in order to put those ideas forward. And that makes us stronger in the long term and stronger in the future of how we fight what the Tories are doing. So those investments are, to me, very, very important. And stand up for workers when they're facing attacks at the present time. I was in Cleator Moor this afternoon and I met a group of workers from Sellafield. They're working very hard. They're doing very serious and very responsible jobs. What's happening is they're being offered a pay rise that's less than the rate of inflation. They're having their pensions attacked, and by the virtual privatisation of whole sections of our industry, jobs and the future are at risk as a result of that. So I'll hear no crocodile tears from the Tories about that. We're standing with workers in whatever industry they happen to be working in order to support them and their rights. And so our campaigns are about all of these things, are about investment and sustainability. Because if you don't invest, you lose out. This town was flooded very badly in 2015. Cockermouth was flooded. Keswick has been flooded. Many places have been flooded. It does mean investment, yes, in flood protection. It also means investment in river management. It also means investment in floodplains and protection of them. It also means saying to the privatised water companies, you, before you're taken back into public ownership, have a role to play in this, in managing your reservoirs so they protect us against flooding as well. These are all issues about how we approach public service and management of industries in this country, and that is what a Labour government is determined to do. And now it's also how we act, what we do around the world. Would we stand by and not bother to pick up the phone and say to Donald Trump on Paris, on the climate change agreement, quite simply, you are wrong. We need that agreement. We need that agreement in order to protect our planet, reduce emissions and ensure sustainability for all of us. It is about a sustainable ecosystems for the future. And I want our Labour government to be recognising that, working with groups and working with communities, and working with agriculture post-Brexit to ensure we have support for farmers in what they do, in food production and in protecting our natural world and our environment, and in, if I had my way, slightly less subsidies for grouse moors, if I may say so. There are so many issues that we face, but it's also about attitudes. There was a terrible event in Charlottesville the other night. A group of far-right racists, white supremacists, Ku Klux Klan, Nazis, turned up in that town in order to attack the black community. Reminiscent of all the horrors of what happened in America in the 30s, 40s and 50s. As if Martin Luther King and the Civil Rights Movement had never happened and never been there. Surely to goodness, everybody anywhere ought to be able to say quite simply, we will never, ever condone, consort with, or give comfort or space to those that have white supremacist, neo-Nazi ideas anywhere in this country or anywhere in the world. We have to set it out for what it is, because the only way of going forward is going forward to achieve things together in our world and our society. And so I want us to continue to grow as a party, to bring people in, to inspire people of what we can achieve together, to recognise the bravery of those that founded our movement in the 19th century, in the depths of despair when they'd seen wages falling, conditions worsening, exploitation and attacks on those that stood up for others. Those people stood up in order to form trade unions, to form the Labour Party, and to help bring us the rights that we've got. The right to vote didn't come as a gift from above. The right for women to vote didn't come as a gift from above. None of those rights that we won ever came from above. They came from the struggles of people wanting their own justice and their own democracy. It's those things that inspire us all to achieve even more in the future. So, our ideas are as relevant today as they've ever been. Our methods might be different because we live in an era of high technology, we live in an era of instant communications. And you know what? That can change politics as well. Because in the general election campaign, most of the national newspapers might have apparently said some very unkind things about me throughout the campaign. I don't know, I didn't read it all, but I've been told, and I believe the people that told me. But we knocked on doors, we held public meetings and rallies, and above all, we used social media to get a message across in a different way. It's a way of getting a message directly across and receiving a message directly across. And so that is what we're doing, and that is what we're achieving. And so we want to live in a world of peace, we want to live in a world of justice and human rights. That means a government that believes in peace, believes in justice, believes in human rights, believes in environmental sustainability, and believes in the people that it represents. And doesn't blame refugees for being refugees, instead looks at the causes of people seeking refuge in the first place. Looks at the causes of those issues and stands together in solidarity. And so we campaign all around the country to get support for our ideas. We campaign all around the country to give people strength of what they can achieve in their lives, what we as a society and a country can achieve together. And we put the pressure on the Tories, the voice of the 18th or 19th century, who redistribute in favour of the richest and most powerful, are incapable of supporting those that do the work in health, in police, in education, or anywhere else, incapable of standing up for any of those, but always, always, always giving a hand up to the very wealthiest into a tax haven or a handout or something like that. We offer something very, very different. And when we say these things together, when we campaign together and we work together, we win. Our movement is absolutely determined. We'll keep that pressure up in Parliament and outside Parliament. We'll keep that pressure up for another chance, for another election, so that we can do what we didn't quite manage to do in June. We put on 3 million votes, we gained a number of seats, a good number of seats, and we gained some fantastic new MPs like Laura. I want her to be joined by a lot of other new fantastic MPs after the next election, so that we can show our strength, show what we're made of, and win. Win for the future, win for the people. I conclude with this. I don't want to live in food bank Britain. I don't want to live in a Britain where your future is decided by the postcode where you're born or the wealth of your parents. I want to live in a country that values everyone, that gives every young person a decent chance and a decent start in life, and promotes unity of communities, not division of communities, supports those that need help and support, and gives them the chance to develop themselves to the full within their lives. It's in our hands to achieve it. It's in our hands to stay together, to push for that election and achieve that victory. Thank you very much, Carlisle. Thank you for everything you do. Thank you for your support.